The crystal walls of Station Omega-7 shone with soft blue light as beings from across the galaxy gathered for an emergency meeting. The Galactic Council had called this session with unusual urgency, and representatives from 47 different species filled the massive chamber. Some floated in special tanks filled with methane, others perched on tall poles, and a few even hung upside down from the ceiling. Each species had its own special area designed just for their comfort. Ambassador Zixa Theta moved her purple tentacles nervously as she prepared to speak. She had been chosen to deliver the most important announcement in recent galactic history. Her three eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of extreme stress among her people. She touched the holographic controls with one tentacle, and a huge image of a blue and green planet appeared in the center of the room. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice being translated into dozens of languages at once by the station's computers. "After extensive study and analysis, we must reclassify planet designation X739 to category Omega status. This means it is completely unsurvivable for intelligent life." Gasps and whistles and clicks filled the chamber. Category Omega was the highest danger rating possible. Only 3 planets in the known galaxy had ever received this classification, and all 3 were gas giants with crushing gravity and toxic atmospheres that could dissolve metal in seconds. Jake Martinez sat in the human section with his colleague, Dr. Lisa Wong. He had been Earth's representative to the Council for only 6 months, and he was still getting used to all the different alien species. Jake was a tall man with short black hair and laugh lines around his brown eyes. He had been a rescue pilot back on Earth before being chosen for this job. Lisa was a scientist, shorter than Jake with long black hair tied back in a practical ponytail. She had spent years studying extreme environments on Earth. Jake leaned back in his chair and tried not to laugh. Lisa noticed and gave him a quick elbow to the ribs. They both knew which planet was being shown on the hologram. "The planet in question," Zix Theta continued, "is known to its native inhabitants as Earth." Now the chamber erupted in complete chaos. The Altarian representative's golden feathers stood straight up in alarm. The Centaurian ambassador's green skin turned pale yellow, a sign of fear. Even the normally calm Elder Voth shifted uncomfortably in his hovering chair. "Earth experiences natural disasters that would end most civilizations," Zixa Theta explained, bringing up a list on the hologram. "The planet has volcanic eruptions that can darken the sky for months. Earthquakes that measure up to 9.5 on the human measurement scale, strong enough to move entire continents. Storm systems called hurricanes with winds over 300 kilometers per hour. Tornadoes that can destroy everything in their path." Jake raised his hand. "Excuse me, Ambassador, but may I ask a question?" Zixa Theta's tentacles twitched with annoyance, but she nodded. "The human representative may speak." Jake stood up, straightening his dark blue uniform. "What exactly makes Earth so dangerous that you've given it your highest threat rating? Everything you've mentioned sounds pretty normal to us." The entire chamber fell silent. The translator systems actually sparked for a moment, as if they couldn't process what Jake had just said. The Altarian representative spoke up, his melodious voice shaking. "Normal? Your planet's temperature ranges from -89 degrees to +57 degrees Celsius. Most of our worlds vary by no more than 20 degrees total." "Oh, you mean winter and summer," Lisa said, standing up next to Jake. "That's just weather. You should see Minnesota in January or Death Valley in July. People vacation in both places." A small gray alien in a breathing mask made a sound like steam escaping from a pipe. The translator indicated this was confusion. "Vacation? Humans voluntarily go to these extreme temperatures for enjoyment?" Jake nodded. "Sure. We go skiing in the mountains where it's freezing cold and the air is so thin you can barely breathe. We go to beaches where the sun can literally burn your skin if you're not careful. We think it's fun." Zix Theta waved her tentacles for silence. "There is more. We must discuss the biological dangers." The hologram changed to show various Earth creatures. Earth has creatures that actively hunt and eat large mammals, sharks that can sense blood from kilometers away, snakes with venom that can kill in minutes, insects that spread deadly diseases. even tiny microscopic organisms that invade the body and multiply. Wait until you hear about Australia, Jake muttered to Lisa, who stifled a laugh. Furthermore, Zix Theta continued, her voice rising higher, humans voluntarily interact with these dangers. You swim in oceans filled with predators. You keep venomous creatures as pets. You climb mountains where the oxygen is too thin to properly breathe. You explore caves that could collapse at any moment. You jump out of flying vehicles with only fabric to slow your fall. That's called skydiving, Lisa explained helpfully. It's really popular. Great views on the way down. The Centaurian ambassador fainted. Medical robots quickly moved in to assist. Elder Voth, ancient and covered in blue crystalline scales, spoke for the first time. His voice was deep and resonated through the chamber. What concerns us most is not just that these dangers exist on Earth, but that humans seem to seek them out. Our analysis shows that your species actively puts itself in danger for what you call recreation or sport. Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. This was going to be harder to explain than they thought. Look, Jake said, spreading his hands in a peaceful gesture. Earth made us tough because we had to be. Every challenge we faced, we overcame. Sure, we have earthquakes, but we learned to build buildings that can withstand them. We have storms, so we developed warning systems. We have dangerous animals, so we learned to respect them and, in many cases, work with them. You work with predators? Squeaked a small pink alien from the back of the room. Dogs were wolves once, Lisa said simply. Now they're our best friends. We took one of our planet's apex predators and turned them into companions who would die to protect us. The chamber fell silent again. The implications of that statement seemed to terrify the assembled aliens even more than the natural disasters. Zix Theta pulled up more images. Your own historical records show countless disasters. Volcanic eruptions that destroyed entire cities. Plagues that killed millions. Ice ages. Asteroid impacts. Mass extinctions. Yet somehow, humans not only survived, but thrived. That's exactly the point, Jake said, his voice becoming passionate. Every single thing that tried to kill us just made us stronger. We didn't run from the danger, we adapted, we learned, we overcame. And now we're here, sitting among the stars with all of you. But at what cost? The Altarian representative asked. How can you live knowing that your planet could kill you at any moment? Lisa smiled. The same way you live knowing that space could kill you if your ship fails. The same way every species here has learned to survive whatever challenges their world threw at them. The only difference is that Earth threw a lot more challenges at us, and we got really good at handling them. An alarm suddenly rang through the chamber. Emergency lights began flashing orange. What's happening? Zix Theta asked the station's computer. Solar storm approaching, the computer announced. Category 3. All personnel should move to shielded areas. Estimated arrival, 40 minutes. The aliens immediately began evacuating in panic, rushing toward the protected center of the station. Jake and Lisa remained seated, looking unconcerned. Aren't you coming? Zix Theta asked, her tentacles waving frantically. Jake checked his watch. Category 3? That's nothing. We get worse radiation from a day at the beach. We'll finish our coffee and head over in a bit. As the last of the terrified aliens fled the chamber, Lisa turned to Jake. I don't think they're ready to hear about the humans who live near Chernobyl or the ones who surf during hurricanes. Jake laughed. One thing at a time. Let's let them process that we think solar storms are mild inconveniences first. Outside the station windows, the first waves of stellar radiation began to light up space in brilliant greens and blues. To the aliens, it was a deadly threat. To the humans, it looked like the northern lights back home. Just another beautiful day in a dangerous universe. 3 weeks had passed since the council meeting, and the galaxy was still talking about Earth's new classification. News feeds on every civilized world showed the same images of Earth's hurricanes, volcanoes, and dangerous wildlife. Parents on distant planets used Earth as a scary story to make their children behave. Scientists debated how any intelligent life could develop on such a hostile world. Captain Amy Rodriguez was having breakfast in the mess hall of her ship, the Pioneer. When the emergency alert came through, She was a woman in her early 40s with short brown hair and strong arms from years of working on ships. Amy had grown up in Puerto Rico, where hurricanes were just part of life. She had learned to fly helicopters during rescue operations after Hurricane Maria, and that experience had eventually led her to the stars. Her engineer, Paul Kim, sat across from her, taking apart a small device while he ate. Paul was a thin man with glasses who could fix anything with enough wire and determination. He had once repaired a broken air system on the International Space Station using only spare parts and chewing gum. Next to him sat Danny Chen, the communications officer, a young man who spoke 12 Earth languages and was learning his 4th alien dialect. The alert made everyone in the mess hall stop eating. The wall screen lit up with the image of Harmony, the Galactic Rescue Coordinator. Harmony was a crystalline being whose body looked like living diamond, constantly shifting between different colors depending on her mood. Right now, she was flashing, red and orange, which meant extreme distress. Emergency announcement to all vessels in Sectors 7 through 15. Harmony's musical voice rang out. A Vraxian colony ship carrying 300 passengers has experienced complete engine failure. They are caught in the gravity well of a rogue planet in the Kepler 442 system. Amy put down her coffee mug and leaned forward. The screen showed details about the rogue planet. It was a frozen ball of ice and methane with no sun to warm it. The surface temperature was minus 200 degrees Celsius. Winds of frozen methane blew at 800 kilometers per hour. The planet's magnetic field was so strong it would destroy most electronics in minutes. The colony ship has crashed on the surface, Harmony continued. They have minimal power, and their hull has been compromised. We estimate they have less than 20 hours before complete life support failure. The mess hall was quiet. Everyone knew what came next. Unfortunately, Harmony said, her color shifting to deep blue, which meant sadness. No rescue is possible. The conditions on the planet exceed all safety parameters. No ship in the galaxy can survive those conditions long enough to complete a rescue. The Galactic Council has officially classified this as a loss event. Amy stood up so fast her chair fell over backward. Like hell it is. Every head in the mess hall turned to look at her. Paul was already pulling up technical specifications on his tablet. Danny was calculating distances and travel times. Amy walked over to the communication panel on the wall and opened a channel to the rescue coordinator. Harmony, this is Captain Rodriguez of the human vessel Pioneer. Send us the coordinates. Harmony's image flickered on the small screen, her crystalline form shifting to yellow, indicating confusion. Captain Rodriguez? I don't understand. Did you not receive the environmental data? We got it, Amy said. Frozen methane atmosphere, 800 km/h winds, massive magnetic interference, crushing atmospheric pressure. Sounds like Tuesday in Antarctica meets a Category 5 hurricane. We've handled worse. There was a long pause. Harmony's color shifted through several shades, finally settling on a purple that meant disbelief. Captain, this is certain death. The planet's atmosphere will crush your ship. The magnetic field will destroy your navigation systems. The cold will freeze your engines. Amy grinned. It was the kind of smile that her crew recognized. It meant they were about to do something that would either be brilliant or get them all killed, possibly both. Paul, she called out. How long to modify our hull for the pressure? Paul didn't even look up from his tablet. 6 hours if I skip. The safety checks. 4 if you let me use the emergency supplies. Do it in 3. Danny, can you figure out a communication system that will work through that magnetic field? Danny was already writing equations on a napkin. The old radio systems from Earth might work. Really basic stuff, like what they used in World War II. The magnetic field won't affect simple analog signals as much. Perfect. Get me a shopping list of what you need from storage. Amy turned back to Harmony's image. We'll need 18 hours total. 6 to modify the ship, 12 for the rescue operation. This is impossible, Harmony said. The Vraxians are a delicate species. They cannot survive in those conditions even for minutes. Then we'll have to be quick, Amy said. She turned to face her crew. All hands, this is the captain. We have 300 lives to save on a frozen hell planet. I need all departments to report to stations. We're going to turn the Pioneer into something that can survive conditions that would kill any sensible species. Good thing we're humans, and no one has ever accused us of being sensible. The crew cheered and ran to their posts. Within minutes, the entire ship was buzzing with activity. In engineering, Paul had spread out blueprints on every available surface. "We need to think like whales," he told his team. "Whales dive to pressures that would crush most submarines. We're going to copy their design. Make the hull flexible, not rigid. It needs to bend with the pressure, not fight it." "That's insane," said one of the junior engineers. "That's the point," Paul replied. Insane is just another word for creative problem solving. On the bridge, Amy was coordinating with other human ships in the area. The captain of the cargo vessel Houston offered spare titanium plating. The science ship Darwin had extra heating units from their Arctic research equipment. The mining vessel Pickaxe volunteered their industrial-strength magnetic anchors. "Why are you all helping?" Harmony asked through the communication system. "This rescue has been deemed impossible by the best minds in the galaxy." Captain Rogers, of the Houston, laughed over the comm. "Ma'am, with respect, those best minds never had to survive a winter in Alaska with a broken heater. Impossible is just a word people use when they haven't tried hard enough yet." Within 4 hours, the Pioneer looked like something from a nightmare. Paul had welded extra plating to the hull in overlapping scales, like a giant metal fish. The ship's landing legs had been replaced with massive magnetic anchors borrowed from the Pickaxe. Danny had strung analog radio antennas all over the exterior, making the ship look like it was covered in metal spider webs. Inside, the crew had transformed the cargo bay into a warming center. They had brought out emergency blankets, chemical, heat packs, and even a few portable heaters that ran on battery power. Maria Garcia, the ship's medic, had prepared treatments for hypothermia using techniques learned from Arctic expeditions on Earth. "This is crazy," said Steve Johnson, one of the rescue specialists. He was checking his environmental suit for the 5th time. "We're about to fly into conditions that make the North Pole look like a tropical resort." "That's why it's going to work," Maria replied. "Everyone else is trying to solve this with high-tech solutions. We're using stuff that's been tested in Earth conditions for centuries. Sometimes simple is better." Amy gathered her rescue team in the airlock. Besides herself, she had chosen Paul, Maria, and Steve. They looked at their environmental suits, which Paul had modified with extra heating elements and 3 times the normal insulation. "Remember," Amy said, "we've all trained for this. Maybe not this exact situation, but close enough. Paul, you did that ice dive in Russia. Maria, you worked the Antarctic Research Station for 2 years. Steve, you climbed Everest, twice. This is just all of those things combined." "When you put it that way, it sounds completely insane," Steve said. "Exactly," Amy grinned. "Which means it's right up our alley." The Pioneer's engines roared to life. The modified ship pulled away from the station, looking like a mechanical sea creature prepared to dive into the deepest ocean. Other ships cleared a path, their crews watching in a mixture of awe and horror. "Final checks," Amy called out as she took her captain's chair. "Engineering?" "Ready as we'll ever be," Paul reported. "I've reinforced everything I can think of and a few things I made up on the spot." "Communications?" "I've got every type of signal ready," Danny said. "From smoke signals to quantum entanglement, something has to work." "Medical?" "Prepared for everything from frostbite to full hypothermic shutdown," Maria confirmed. "Navigation?" "I'm flying by instinct and prayer," said the pilot, Kyle Brooks. "The computer will be useless once we hit that magnetic field," Amy nodded. "Then let's go save some lives." The Pioneer turned toward the coordinates of the rogue planet and engaged its engines at full power. Behind them, Harmony watched on the station's screens, her crystalline form shifting to a color that had no translation in any language. It was the color of witnessing something that should not be possible. "Humans," she said quietly. "They really are from a Category Omega world." The Pioneer hit the rogue planet's atmosphere like a bowling ball dropped into a blender full of ice and explosives. The ship shook so hard that unsecured items flew across the bridge. Warning lights flashed red, yellow, and orange in a chaotic disco of danger. Alarms blared from every system, creating a symphony of mechanical panic. Kyle Brooks gripped the control stick with both hands, his knuckles white from the effort. The automatic pilot had shut down the moment they entered the magnetic field, just as expected. Now Kyle was flying purely on instinct, feeling the ship's responses through his hands and adjusting second by second. Hull pressure at 120%. Someone called out. Still green, Paul shouted from his engineering station. The whale design is holding. We're bending but not breaking. Through the view screen they could see nothing but swirling gray and white. The methane storm wrapped around them like a living thing, trying to tear the ship apart. Lightning made, of frozen gases crackled across the hull, creating a light show that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so deadly. Can anyone see the colony ship? Amy asked, remarkably calm despite the chaos around her. She was sipping coffee from her thermos, which had somehow stayed in her cup holder through all the shaking. Negative, Danny replied, frantically adjusting dials on his communication equipment. But I'm getting something on the radio. It's faint, but it's there. He put it on speakers. Through the static came a weak signal, clicking sounds that the translator struggled to interpret. After a moment, words formed. Please. Anyone. Dying. Cold. No hope. That's them. Amy stood up. Danny, can you clear that signal? Working. On it. Danny was connecting wires and adjusting antennas like a mad scientist. The magnetic field is interfering with everything, but these old Earth radios are tougher than I thought. Paul looked at his screens. Captain, I'm reading a massive ice shelf about 3 kilometers ahead. If the colony ship crashed, that would be the most likely place. Kyle, take us there. In this storm, I can't see 10 meters in front of us. Then fly by feel. You've done it before. Kyle muttered something about crazy captains and impossible missions, but his hands moved expertly. On the controls. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the wind patterns through the ship's movements. There, he said suddenly. The wind is hitting something big ahead and splitting around it. That has to be the ice shelf. The Pioneer pushed through the storm, its modified hull groaning but holding. Then through a brief gap in the swirling methane, they saw it. The Vraxian colony ship was embedded in a wall of blue-white ice, tilted at a 45-degree angle. It looked like a giant silver insect that had been frozen mid-flight. Paul, deploy the anchors, Amy ordered. Massive magnetic clamps shot out from the Pioneer's belly, designed for holding onto asteroids during mining operations. They slammed into the ice with tremendous force, creating cracks that spread for dozens of meters. The ship lurched to a stop, though the wind still tried to tear it away. Anchors holding, Paul reported. But I don't know for how long. This ice is harder than steel at these temperatures. Amy was already heading for the airlock with her rescue team. They put on their modified environmental suits, which looked like someone had wrapped spacesuits in sleeping bags and then added another layer of aluminum foil on top. Remember, Amy said as they did final checks, this is just like that training exercise in Alaska. The one where Steve almost got frostbite on his nose? Maria asked. My nose was fine, Steve protested. It was my ears that almost fell off. Well, keep them covered this time, Amy said. She hit the button to open the inner airlock door. Let's go for a walk. They entered the airlock and waited for it to cycle. When the outer door opened, the cold hit them like a physical blow. Even through their super-insulated suits, they could feel it trying to steal every bit of warmth from their bodies. The wind immediately tried to pick them up and throw them into the storm. Only their magnetic boots cranked up to maximum power kept them attached to the Pioneer's hull. They moved in single file, Amy leading, each person holding onto a safety line connected to the person in front of them. Sound off, Amy said through the radio. Paul here, my beard is already frozen inside my helmet. Maria here. Remind me why we thought this was a good idea? Steve here. At least on Everest, the mountain didn't try to throw you off. It just sat there and let you freeze. They made their way across the gap between the ships. The distance was only about 50 meters, but it took them 20 minutes. The wind kept trying to tear them away, and the ice beneath their feet was slick as glass. At one point, Steve's foot slipped and he started sliding toward the edge. Maria grabbed him just in time using techniques learned from ice rescue training in Canada. Finally, they reached the colony ship. Its hull was covered in a thick layer of frozen methane, making it look like it had been dipped in white crystal. Paul immediately went to work on the emergency airlock, pulling out tools that he had modified for the cold. The lock mechanism is frozen solid, he reported. The metal has actually become brittle from the cold. If I force it, it might shatter. So, what do we do? Steve asked. Paul pulled out something that looked like a roll of silver tape. Duct tape, the ultimate human engineering solution. You're going to open an alien airlock with duct tape? Maria asked. Not just any duct tape, Paul said proudly. This is military grade, rated for temperatures down to -100 Celsius. I've added heating elements powered by these batteries. We wrap it around the lock mechanism. It heats up the metal just enough to make it flexible again, and then we can open it manually. It took Paul 15 minutes of careful work, during which the others formed a human shield around him to block the worst of the wind. Finally, there was a click and a hiss as the airlock opened. They rushed inside and closed the outer door. The inner atmosphere was still breathable but barely above freezing. Ice crystals fell from their suits as they moved through the airlock and into the colony ship proper. The scene that greeted them was heartbreaking. 300 Vraxians huddled together in the main compartment, their insectoid bodies pressed close for warmth. The Vraxians were tall, delicate creatures with beautiful, translucent wings and compound eyes. They were built for the warm, humid world they came from, not this frozen hell. Many of them were barely moving. Their normal, bright green coloring had faded to a sick gray. Some of the smaller ones, the children, weren't moving at all, held by their parents who clicked frantically in their language. Captain Thurex approached them slowly. He was larger than the others, with darker coloring that marked him as a leader. His wings were cracked from the cold, and ice had formed on his antennae. Humans? He clicked, the translator turning it into words. You came? But this is impossible. No one can survive here. We're from Earth, Amy said simply. Our whole planet is impossible. This is just another Thursday for us. Maria was already moving among the Vraxians, checking vital signs and distributing chemical heat packs. Everyone squeeze these and hold them against your body cores, she instructed. They'll create heat without needing power. The Vraxians looked at the small packets suspiciously. Steve demonstrated squeezing one until it grew warm. Old Earth technology, he explained. Been around for over a century. Simple chemistry, no electronics needed. Paul was examining the ship's power systems. Your main reactor is dead, but the backup batteries still have some charge. I can reroute them to life support, but it won't last long. How are we getting them out? Steve asked Amy. They'll freeze solid if we take them through that storm. Amy pulled out a bundle of thick blankets from her pack. They looked handmade, with colorful patterns stitched into them. These are based on designs from the Inuit people of Earth. They've been keeping humans warm in the Arctic for thousands of years. We wrap everyone up, create a chain of people, and move fast. You want us to go out there? Thurex clicked in alarm. We'll die instantly. Not instantly, Amy said cheerfully. You've got at least 3 or 4 minutes before serious damage. We can get groups of 20 to our ship in that time. This is insane. Yes, Amy agreed. But it's the good kind of insane. The kind that saves lives. Maria had finished her initial treatment of the most critical cases. We need to move the children first. They're smaller, easier to carry, but more vulnerable to the cold. Amy nodded and activated her radio. Pioneer, this is Rodriguez. We're beginning evacuation. Have the cargo bay ready to receive survivors. Crank the heaters to maximum. Copy. That, came Kyle's voice. Fair warning, we've lost 2 anchors. The ice is cracking. We maybe have 2 hours before we have to leave. Then we better move fast. They organized the Vraxians into groups. The children were wrapped in multiple blankets, looking like colorful cocoons. The adults were given heat packs to hold and instructed to move quickly, but carefully. First group. Let's go, Amy announced. The transfer was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. The humans formed a chain through the storm, passing Vraxians from one to another like a bucket brigade. The wind screamed around them, trying to tear everyone apart. The cold was so intense that their suits' warning systems gave up and just displayed error messages, but they kept moving. When one person stumbled, another was there too. Inside the Pioneer's cargo bay, 300 Vraxians slowly came back to life. The massive space had been transformed into something that looked like a disaster relief center from Earth. Blankets covered every surface, creating colorful nests, where Vraxians huddled together. Portable heaters hummed in the corners, their orange glow casting warm light across the room. The air smelled of hot chocolate, which Danny had somehow managed to make using powder packets from the emergency supplies. Paul had rigged up heat lamps from the hydroponics bay, hanging them from the ceiling like artificial suns. He had explained to anyone who would listen that they used the same principle as the heat lamps in reptile habitats on Earth. The Vraxians, being cold-blooded, responded well to the radiant heat, their gray coloring slowly returning to healthy green. Maria moved between the groups with her medical kit, checking temperatures and treating the worst cases of cold exposure. She had set up an area for the most affected children, using techniques she had learned during a rotation at a hospital in Siberia. The human body's response to cold wasn't that different from the Vraxians', it turned out. Keep the core warm, treat the extremities carefully, and watch for shock. Captain Threx stood near the main heating unit, his compound eyes watching the humans work. His wings, which had been cracked and brittle from the cold, were beginning to heal. The natural healing properties of his species worked faster in warmth, and already the cracks were sealing themselves. Amy walked over to him, having finally gotten out of her environmental suit. Her hair was plastered to her head with sweat, and she moved stiffly from the cold that had seeped through despite all their protection. She carried 2 mugs of hot chocolate, offering one to the Vraxian captain. "I don't know if your species can drink this," she said, "but it's traditional human cold weather medicine." Threx accepted the mug carefully, his 4-fingered hands wrapping around its warmth. He took a cautious sip through his mandibles, then made a sound that the translator interpreted as pleased surprise. "It's sweet," he said, "and warm. On our world, we have something similar made from fermented tree sap." They stood together, watching the recovery efforts. Steve was teaching a group of young Vraxians how to make snow angels on the blankets, which made no sense but seemed to entertain them. Danny had found a guitar somewhere and was playing soft music, the sound helping to calm nerves still rattled from the ordeal. "I need to understand," Threx said finally. "My people, we evolved on a paradise world. Constant temperature, no predators, abundant food. We developed spaceflight out of curiosity, not necessity. But you humans, we developed spaceflight to see if anywhere else was as crazy as Earth." Amy finished with a laugh. "Turns out most places are pretty boring compared to home. But how do you live with such constant danger? Doesn't it frighten you?" Amy thought for a moment. "Sure, we get scared, but fear on Earth isn't something that stops you. It's something that keeps you alert. My grandmother lived through 3 Category 5 hurricanes in Puerto Rico. Each time she would board up her windows, stock up on supplies, and ride it out. When I asked her why she didn't leave, she said the hurricane was just weather, but that was her home." A young Vraxian approached them, one of the children Maria had treated first. She was small, maybe equivalent to a human 7-year-old, with bright green wings that sparkled in the light. She held something in her hands, offering it to Amy. It was a small crystal, naturally formed on the Vraxian homeworld. It glowed with a soft inner light, pulsing like a heartbeat. "For you," the child clicked shyly. "My mother says it's for heroes." Amy knelt down to the child's level. "Thank you, but we're not heroes, we're just people who knew how to handle the cold." The child's antennae twitched, which Maria had learned was like a human smile. "My teacher says heroes are people who help when helping is hard." "Then I guess everyone can be a hero sometimes," Amy said, accepting the crystal. Paul's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, we're approaching Station Omega 7. You might want to see this." Amy made her way to the bridge, Threx following curiously. Through the view screen, they could see the massive space station, but something was different. Ships surrounded it, hundreds of them from every species in the Galactic Council. As the Pioneer approached, the ships moved aside, creating a corridor. "Danny, are you getting any communications?" Amy asked. "Oh yeah," Danny said, his eyes wide. "Every ship is broadcasting the same message on all frequencies." He put it on speakers. The sound that filled the bridge was unlike anything they had heard before. It was applause, or the equivalent from dozens of different species. Clicks, whistles, harmonics, and rhythmic light flashes all combined into a symphony of celebration. Harmony's image appeared on the main screen. The crystalline being was shifting through every color in the spectrum, creating a rainbow effect that was apparently the highest form of respect her species could show. "Pioneer, you have accomplished the impossible," she said. 300 lives saved from a Category Omega planet. The entire galaxy is watching. Amy felt uncomfortable with the attention. "We just did what anyone would do." "That's precisely the point," Harmony replied. "No one else would have even tried." As they docked with the station, medical teams were waiting, but they stopped in surprise when they saw the Vraxians walking off the ship under their own power, many of them even carrying their own belongings. They had expected barely alive survivors, not this group that looked like they had just returned from a difficult camping trip. The human medical team from the station's Earth section had also arrived, led by Dr. Charlie Washington. He was a tall man from Chicago who had trained in emergency medicine before coming to space. He looked over Maria's treatment notes and whistled. "You treated severe hypothermia with blankets and hot chocolate?" he asked. "And chemical heat packs," Maria added. "Don't forget the heat packs. This is incredible. The Galactic Medical Board is going to want to study this. You use technology that's over a century old to solve a problem their most advanced equipment couldn't handle." The Vraxians were transferred to the medical bay for full checkups, but most were already recovering well. The children were playing some sort of game that Steve had taught them, which seemed to involve pretending the floor was lava, a concept that horrified their parents but delighted them. In the council chambers, an emergency session had been called. Representatives from every species had gathered, and for once they all seemed to agree on something. The footage from the rescue was being played on the main screen. The images of humans walking through the methane storm like it was a windy day, of them carrying Vraxian children through conditions that should have killed them instantly, of the modified Pioneer looking like something held together with tape and determination. Elder Voth stood to address the assembly. "We have witnessed something that our science says is impossible. A species from a Category Omega world has successfully rescued colonists from another Category Omega world. This forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about survival and adaptation." The Altarian representative raised a wing. "I motion that we create a new classification, Category Omega Adapted, for species that not only survive on deadly worlds, but thrive on them." "Seconded," clicked the Centaurian ambassador. Jake, Martinez, and Lisa Wong were back in their seats, having rushed to the station when they heard about the rescue. Jake was trying not to look too smug, while Lisa was taking notes on everything. "Furthermore," Elder Voth continued, "I propose that humans be designated as the galaxy's official extreme environment specialists. When we encounter worlds we deem impossible, they will evaluate them for potential colonization or resource extraction." "You want us to check out all the dangerous planets?" Jake asked. "Who else would we send?" Voth replied. "You consider them weekend challenges." Back in the medical bay, Amy was sitting with Captain Threx and his family. His mate and 2 children had been among the colonists, and they were all recovering well. The youngest was wearing one of Steve's baseball caps, which looked absurd on an insectoid head, but which she refused to take off. "We owe you everything," Threx said. "How can we ever repay this?" Amy shrugged. "Pay it forward. Someday someone else will need help. When that happens, remember that impossible is just a word." Paul entered the medical bay, covered in grease, and looking exhausted but satisfied. "Captain, I've got the damage report. We lost about 30% of our hull plating, most of our anchors are gone, and I'm pretty sure the coffee maker is broken." "The coffee maker?" Amy said in horror. "Now that's a real emergency." The room laughed. Even the Vraxians, who had quickly learned that humans considered coffee almost as essential as oxygen. Harmony appeared on a nearby screen. "Captain Rodriguez, the Galactic Council would like to honor you and your crew. They're preparing a ceremony." Amy groaned. Do we have to? We just did our job. That's exactly why you must be honored, Harmony said. You treated saving 300 lives from an impossible situation as just another day's work. The galaxy needs to understand what humans are capable of. What we're capable of is fixing problems with duct tape and stubbornness, Paul muttered. Exactly, Harmony said, and for the first time her crystalline form showed what might have been amusement. And that terrifies and inspire. 6 months had passed since the Vraxian rescue, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council had called another emergency session, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of fear and confusion, there was excitement and curiosity. The massive chamber buzzed with conversation as representatives from every corner of known space took their seats. Ambassador Zixatheta stood at the central platform, her purple tentacles calm and controlled. She had spent the last 6 months studying everything about Earth and humans, and what she had learned had changed her entire worldview. Next to her stood a new figure, someone the Council had never expected to see in their chambers. It was 10-year-old Tommy Harrison from Denver, Colorado, Earth. He was on a school field trip, the first human child to visit the Galactic Council. He wore jeans and a t-shirt with a picture of a tornado that said, "Storm Chaser in Training." He was holding a juice box and looking around with wide eyes at all the aliens. "Why is there a human juvenile here?" the Centaurian ambassador asked, his green skin flickering with concern. "To make a point," Zix Theta replied. "Young Tommy, please tell the council about your summer vacation." Tommy shrugged and took a sip of his juice box. "Well, me and my family went camping in Yellowstone. We saw a bear, but Dad said to just make noise and it would go away. And it did. Then we went hiking near the hot springs, but you have to stay on the path because the water can melt your skin off. Oh, and we saw Old Faithful shoot water super high, and at night we heard wolves howling, which was really cool." The council chamber was dead silent. The Altarian representative had actually fainted again. "This child," Zix Theta said slowly, "voluntarily vacationed in a location with large predators, geological features that could cause instant death, and carnivorous pack hunters. And he found it enjoyable." "It was awesome," Tommy added. "Next year, Dad says we can go hurricane watching in Florida." Several more representatives looked close to fainting. Jake Martinez stood up from his seat, trying not to laugh. "With respect, Ambassador, you've made your point. Maybe we should let Tommy go back to his class before you traumatize the entire council." Tommy waved goodbye to everyone and walked out, still sipping his juice box, completely unaware that he had just terrified some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Elder Voth cleared his throat, a sound like grinding crystals. "Perhaps we should discuss the real reason for this meeting. The human colonization proposals." A holographic display appeared showing dozens of worlds, all marked with the Category Omega designation. Worlds with toxic atmospheres, extreme gravity, constant volcanic activity, or worse. Worlds that every other species had written off as death traps. Captain Amy Rodriguez entered the chamber, now wearing the insignia of humanity's Extreme Environment Division. She had been promoted after the Vraxian rescue, and was now in charge of evaluating dangerous planets for human colonization. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of various descriptions," Amy began, "in the past 6 months we've surveyed 37 Category Omega worlds. We're happy to report that 31 of them are suitable for human colonization." The uproar was immediate. Representatives shouted, clicked, and whistled in their various languages. The translator systems struggled to keep up. "Suitable?" the Altarian representative squawked. "These are death worlds." Amy pulled up an image of one planet. Its surface was covered in active volcanoes, and the atmosphere was mostly sulfur dioxide. "This one reminds us of Iceland mixed with Venus. We're calling it New Reykjavik. The volcanic soil will be incredibly fertile once we treat it. The sulfur can be harvested for industrial purposes. We estimate a thriving colony of 50,000 within 10 years. She switched to another image, a world covered entirely in ice with temperatures reaching minus 150 degrees Celsius. This one we're calling Frost Harbor, similar to Antarctica but with better fishing. The ice actually protects from cosmic radiation. making it safer than many garden worlds, perfect for underground cities. Paul Kim had joined her, carrying a box of equipment. We've also developed something we're calling the danger rating system for tourists. Tourists? Harmony asked, her crystalline form shifting to confused purple. Paul grinned. Oh yeah. Turns out once word got out about Earth being Category Omega, everyone wanted to visit. We've had over 1 million applications for extreme adventure tours. He pulled out a brochure and started reading. Experience Earth's deadliest adventures. Swim with great white sharks, climb active volcanoes, chase tornadoes, stand in a hurricane. For the truly brave, spend a week in Australia where everything is trying to kill you. This is insane, the Vraxian ambassador said. It was not Therex who was back with his colony, but his replacement. You're commercializing danger? Lisa Wong stood up. It's already working. We had our first tour group last month. 12 Altarians wanted to see a thunderstorm. They were terrified but said it was the most exciting experience of their lives. They're already booking their next trip. Danny Chen added, We've had to create safety waivers in over 300 languages. The legal department is having a field day. Ambassador Creel of the Dominion Empire, the military power who had been silent for months, finally spoke. We need to discuss the real issue here. Humans can colonize worlds we cannot. They can rescue people from situations we deemed hopeless. They treat our worst nightmares as recreational activities. What happens when they decide they want more than just the dangerous worlds? The chamber went quiet. This was the fear that no one had wanted to voice. If humans could survive anything, what could stop them? Amy and Jake exchanged glances, then Amy spoke. Ambassador Creel, you're thinking about this wrong. We don't want to conquer anyone. We don't want your comfortable worlds. They're boring. To us. Boring? Creel asked. No offense, Jake added, but most of your worlds are too safe. No weather, no predators, no challenges. Humans need adversity. We get restless without it. That's why we do things like climb mountains or dive to the ocean floor. We're not wired for paradise. Lisa pulled up a psychological study. We've found that humans living on safe worlds actually develop higher rates of depression and anxiety. We need challenge to feel alive. Your pleasant worlds would drive us crazy with boredom. Steve Johnson, who had been invited to share his experience from the rescue, raised his hand. Can I tell you something? After we saved the Vraxians, I tried to take a vacation on a resort world. Perfect temperature, no danger, everything peaceful. I lasted 3 days before I was climbing the walls. Ended up leaving early to go ice diving on Europa. Maria Garcia nodded. It's true. I volunteered for a medical rotation on Paradise Prime. 2 weeks in, I was so bored I started hoping for a medical emergency. When someone finally got a paper cut, I was actually excited. Elder Voth made a sound that might have been laughter. So you're saying that humanity's greatest weakness is that they cannot tolerate safety? Pretty much, Amy agreed. We're genetically programmed to seek challenge. It's why we left Earth in the first place. Not because we had to, but because space was there and we wanted to see if we could survive it. The discussion continued for hours. Plans were made for human colonies on dozens of worlds previously thought uninhabitable. Trade agreements were established for resources that only humans could harvest from dangerous locations. The Galactic Rescue Service officially requested human advisors for all extreme environment situations. But the biggest surprise came when the Vraxian ambassador stood up. Captain Therex wanted me to deliver a message. His colony has decided to stay. Stay? Where? Amy asked. On the ice planet where they crashed. The one you rescued them from. Everyone stared in shock. They want to stay on a Category Omega world? Zix Theta's tentacles went rigid with surprise. Captain Therex says that surviving that experience changed them. They want to learn to be strong like humans. They're calling their new city challenge, and they've asked for human advisors to teach them about extreme weather survival. Amy couldn't help but smile. Of course we'll help. Though I should warn them, once you start seeking out danger for fun, it's hard to stop. As the meeting concluded, Tommy Harrison's class was touring the station's observation deck. Through the massive windows, they could see Earth hanging in space, blue and white and perfect. The human children pressed against the glass, pointing out continents and weather patterns. "Look," one girl shouted. "There's a hurricane forming near Japan." "Cool," the kids chorused. Their alien tour guide, a nervous centaurian, watched in amazement as the human children got excited about a storm system that could level cities. "Don't you fear it?" he asked. Tommy looked up at him with confused eyes. "Fear it? Why? It's just weather. My grandpa survived Hurricane Katrina. He says hurricanes are just the Earth's way of keeping us on our toes." Back in the council chambers, the final vote was being tallied. The measure passed unanimously. Humanity would be designated the galaxy's extreme environment specialists, with full colonization rights to any category Omega world they could survive. As the representatives filed out, many stopped to shake hands with the human delegation. Fear was still there, but it was mixed with respect and even admiration. Harmony approached Amy as the chamber emptied. "Captain, may I ask you something personal?" "Sure. Do humans ever feel fear?"